I'll be honest, I'm a public speaker. I'm not a writer. And I've never thought of myself as an author. And yet, what I want to do over the next several minutes is walk you through how I create ebooks. Because I don't sit down and type away. That's just not something that I've grown accustomed to yet when it comes to writing something longer. Obviously, I can write a blog post. But when it comes to writing 40, 50, 80 pages, all stacked in a line so that the threads run through them, so that they're intelligent and cohesive, that's not a skill I have when it comes to writing. But as a public speaker, I could tell stories for hours, and I can link up the stories and make them make sense. And so I want to walk you through how I create an ebook in one day. Now, I'll be honest with you, the one day thing is kind of tricky because the reality is I'm prepping content for weeks. I'm just not prepping content the way at least the way I think that authors prep content. See, as a person who stands on stage and talks to people, I prep most of my material by talking with people. I'll sit at a lunch or sit at a cafe or hang out in the hallway after an event, and we'll be chatting, and I will test out material, much like maybe I imagine a stand-up comic might, except I'm not telling jokes, I'm telling stories. And of course, if you're in the space, if you're talking about the kinds of things and interacting with people over the kinds of things that you're going to write an ebook about, you have a tremendous amount of opportunity to test the stories and ideas that you have. And so for 5-6 weeks, I will test material. I will tell a story and see if it hits. I'll tell an anecdote here or there and see if people are connecting with it and see if it makes sense, or if I've gone too long, or if someone just goes, I don't get it. I don't see the correlation. See, most of the way that I teach people is I give them a story, I tell them a story, and then I help them see that story through a particular lens, and then they have the aha moment, like, oh, I totally get where you're going with this. I see how that story relates to your main point. And so if I were doing that with you, if I was sitting with you and I was talking, you wouldn't know whether we're just having a conversation or whether we're having a conversation, but in answer to your question, I'm testing material that I would like to put into an ebook. Either way, it's still a good answer for you. It's still the right answer for you because it's the way I think about something, yet I'm able to evaluate and collect feedback to determine, is this the right answer? And so if it works, as I test my stories and I see which ones work, and I can even test, particularly for longer conversations, I can test the order of stories. I then finally get to the point where I feel like I have enough. I have enough material to talk. Now, how long are my ebooks? I'll tell you right now. They should take roughly an hour and a half to 2 hours for you to read. And the way that I judge that is because they take me an hour and a half to speak. So if you read at the pace that I speak, it'll be an hour and a half. If you read a little slower, it might take you 2 hours. Now, I know some people who can read through one of my ebooks in an hour. If they're speed readers, if you're a speed reader, that's fine. I don't have an issue. But I like to keep it at that pace because I feel like I can get enough information to you and not overwhelm you. And so, when I feel like I have all the stories and all the order that I want, I sit down with my iPhone. I open up an application called Rev. You can find the website at rev.com, but they have an iPhone app, and I hit record. And I talk for 7 minutes. I tell the stories as if you were sitting across the table from me, if we were sitting in a cafe, and I would tell you the stories in exactly the same way. And I talk to my phone as if you're there. And when I'm done with one section, I hit stop. And I push a button at the bottom of that screen that says transcribe, and it sends it off to Rev. They charge me $1 per minute. If I talk for 7 minutes, that's $7. And then I hit record again, and I move into the next chapter. And I do that one after another. And mind you, this is all material that I have already tested out, material I fully understand already. right? I've lived with it for 6 weeks. It's the same way that I prepare a talk, where I'll test out material and I'll move it around and adjust it. When I finally am done, I've lived with the material for so long, I don't need notes, I don't need outlines, I don't need screens of data, because I've been living with this content for 6 weeks at least. Now, some of you think, well, no, that's you. That's not me. I couldn't do it. But I bet you're wrong. I bet you're wrong, because if I asked you right now without any prep at all, if I asked you to stand up right now and talk for 10 minutes straight without any prep, you'd say, there's no way I can do that. I'm not you. You can do that. I can't do that, et cetera, et cetera. And then I challenge you. I bet you $100, $200, and you're thinking, this guy's crazy. And then I say, all right, here's your prompt. Here's the talking topic. Tell me about a vacation you've taken in the last 5 years and what you did and what you loved about it. And all of a sudden you're thinking, dang it, I'm going to owe him some money. Because the reality is, you can talk for 10 minutes about your vacation. And you know why? Because you were there. Because you lived it. And the reality is, when I'm preparing content for a talk or for a book, and I'm talking about eBooks, small books, right? 40, 80, 90 pages, not those big serious books that serious authors do. Well, when you're doing that, you've lived with the content for 6 weeks. It's the same as living through a week-long vacation. You've been there, you've looked at it, you've interacted. You can talk about it without anything else. After I've hit record several times, after I've hit transcribe several times, I go to bed. I mostly do that at night, and then I go to bed. And when I wake up the next morning, even though it may only take an hour to get one of those files back, when I wake up the next morning, there are 7 or 8 or 9 emails back that Rev has sent me, each one of the files transcribed. These aren't computers doing transcription. These are people, actual people, who listen to the audio and then type out what you have to say or what you've already said. They send me Word documents, 7, 8, 9, however many chapters I recorded. If I spoke for an hour and a half, right, that's typically for me about 7 or 8 different chapters, and I'll get 8 files. Now I take those files, and the first thing I want to do is I want to send them to someone to edit them. You can find it on Odesk or Elance. You can even find it on Fiverr, or you may have a friend, right? But I'll send these files to someone and say, can you just edit this? All I'm looking for is just any grammatical mistakes, right? Because they're transcribing what I've written, and every now and then, you know, either you'll have the word inaudible in the middle of the transcript, or you might have a set of words that they just don't make sense reading them in comparison to when I was saying them. And so someone cleans them up a little. That typically takes me less than 3 days, right? If I want to get really crazy, if I'm really trying to push being done with the entire ebook in a single day, well, if I'm looking at 24 hours, it takes me an hour and a half to talk. It really will take less than 8 hours, sometimes less than 5 hours to get all 8 chapters back. And if I want, I don't need to edit, right? These days it's a nice to have, but I'll take all that, throw it into one Word document. It's already in Word, so I'm just cutting and pasting. Put in the titles, declare that there are, H1 or H2s, so that I can create a table of contents, and then put a cover on it, upload it to Amazon. And the whole process takes me way less than 24 hours. If I want to get it edited, right, it may take me 2 or 3 days to get that back. If I want to get it laid out in InDesign from someone who's a professional at just doing layouts, maybe it'll take another 2 days. In the midst of that time, I may still have hired someone to design a really great cover. I've never done that before, but I could imagine doing it, right? Take a few days. But within the span of a week, for sure, for as fancy as you want to get, you could be done. And of course, if you do it like me, you'll be done in a day. Will it be perfect? Probably not. Will it be an Amazon bestseller? Probably not. But that's not how I use my ebooks. I don't use my ebooks to say, I'm going to make all my money off an ebook. I use my ebooks as a simple way to either sell them to or give them to people who then having read it, say, yes, I'd like to bring you back to speak at an event, or yes, I'd like to hire you as a consultant to do some strategy work for us or to help us solve a particular problem. They're credibility components, right? The fact that you've sat down to write something, and of course they're imagining how long it takes to type, and you and I know the secret. I use rev.com.